Vulnerability is one of the most misunderstood aspects of being human. For a long time, I equated it with weakness. Growing up, the message was clear: protect yourself at all costs, never let people see you cry, and definitely don't let anyone know when you're scared. Society often echoes this sentiment, doesn't it? We're taught that being strong means having everything together, being unaffected, and pushing through no matter what. But what I've learned, often through painful, messy experiences, is that real strength is not about how well we can avoid vulnerability, but how fully we can embrace it. Think about it. Every courageous act we admire, every deep connection we crave, every creative endeavor that inspires us is rooted in vulnerability. It's stepping into uncertainty without knowing how things will turn out. It's saying I love you without any guarantee that the other person will say it back. It's showing up for a big presentation or a job interview, knowing full well that rejection is a possibility. Vulnerability asks us to risk, to care, to put our hearts on the line, even when the outcome is far from certain. But here's the paradox: while vulnerability feels like weakness when we're in it, it often looks like courage to the people around us. When we see someone share their struggles or admit their fears, we don't think less of them. Instead, we often feel a deep respect for their bravery. We're drawn to their humanity, their realness. That's because vulnerability is the birthplace of connection. It's where trust is built, where love deepens, and where empathy finds its roots. Yet, embracing vulnerability is no small feat. It requires us to let go of control, to stop perfecting and performing, and to make peace with the idea that we are enough even in our rawest, most unpolished moments. That's terrifying because it goes against everything we've been conditioned to believe. We're told to hide our imperfections, to curate our lives, and to highlight reels for others to admire. But the truth is, the moments when we feel most exposed, most human, are often the moments when we grow the most. I think of vulnerability as a muscle, one that gets stronger the more we use it. The first time you open up to someone about your struggles, it might feel unbearable. You might worry, what will they think of me? Will they judge me? But over time, as you let people see the real you, you start to realize that their responses don't define your worth. The courage to be vulnerable becomes a gift you give yourself, the freedom to be seen and known for who you truly are. And yes, there will be times when vulnerability feels like it backfires. Not everyone will handle your openness with care, and sometimes it might lead to hurt. But even in those moments, you're reminded of your resilience. You learn that vulnerability isn't about the outcome, it's about the willingness to show up, to be present, and to take the risk of being real. It's an act of defiance against fear and a declaration that you are not your mistakes, your insecurities, or the mask you wear to fit in. Vulnerability is not about exposing everything to everyone, nor is it about oversharing for the sake of it. It's about discernment, knowing who has earned the right to hear your story and choosing courage over comfort when it matters most. It's a deeply personal practice, one that requires us to listen to our inner voice and trust our instincts about what feels safe and meaningful. And it's in those moments, those brave, unguarded moments, that we discover the depth of our own strength. Authenticity is a word we hear a lot, but living it is another matter entirely. To be authentic means to show up as your true self without the masks, without the scripts, and without the constant need for approval. Yet, in a world that often celebrates perfection, fitting in, and conformity, authenticity can feel like an act of rebellion. It asks us to step away from the roles we're expected to play and into the truth of who we are, even when that truth isn't pretty, polished, or convenient. For a long time, I thought being authentic was simple: just be yourself, right? But what I've come to understand is that authenticity isn't always natural, especially in a society that conditions us to hide certain parts of ourselves. From an early age, we're taught to please, to perform, and to adapt to the expectations of others. Maybe it's the pressure to get the good grades, to fit into a specific mold, or to be liked and accepted. Slowly, without even realizing it, we start editing ourselves, hiding the quirks, the doubts, and the vulnerabilities that make us who we are. The problem is, the more we deny those parts of ourselves, the more disconnected we feel. It's like trying to build a house on shaky ground. No matter how impressive the exterior looks, if the foundation isn't solid, it won't hold. Authenticity is that foundation. It's what allows us to feel grounded, to trust ourselves, and to navigate life with clarity and intention. But to live authentically means we have to do the hard work of peeling back the layers and asking, who am I really? What do I value? What parts of myself have I hidden, and why? And here's the thing about authenticity. It's not about being the same person in every situation. It's not about announcing every thought or wearing your emotions on your sleeve all the time. It's about alignment, aligning your actions, choices, and words with your values and beliefs, regardless of the circumstances. It's about showing up in a way that feels true to you, even if it means disappointing others or standing out. Living authentically can feel risky because it invites judgment. When you show people who you really are, some will resonate with it, but others won't. There's a vulnerability in saying, this is me, because there's always the chance someone might reject you. And yet the alternative, living a life dictated by what others think or expect, is even more costly. It drains your energy, erodes your sense of self, and leaves you feeling like a stranger in your own life. What I've learned is that authenticity isn't just about how we present ourselves, it's about how we connect with others. When you're authentic, you create space for others to be authentic too. Think about the people in your life you feel most comfortable around. Chances are they're the ones who are real, who don't pretend to have it all together, and who allow their imperfections to show. Their authenticity gives you permission to drop your guard, to exhale, and to be yourself. That's the power of authenticity. It's contagious. But let's be clear, authenticity is not always easy. It requires courage because it demands that we let go of our need for control and perfection. It asks us to risk being misunderstood, to own our flaws, and to stop hiding behind what's comfortable or familiar. Sometimes it means having difficult conversations, standing up for what we believe in, or choosing paths that others don't understand. And that's scary because authenticity often comes with a price. Yet, while authenticity may cost you relationships, opportunities, or approval, it gives you something far more valuable in return: peace of mind and self-respect. It allows you to wake up each day knowing that the person you see in the mirror is real, not a curated version of someone you think the world wants you to be. It's a freedom that can't be faked or bought, but one that comes from the deep, unwavering knowledge freedom that can't be faked or bought, but one that comes from the deep, unwavering knowledge that you are enough just as you are. Authenticity also forces us to be honest with ourselves, which is often the hardest part. It's one thing to say, I'm going to be real with the people around me, but it's another to face your own truths, the things you've been avoiding, denying, or justifying. Being authentic means asking yourself tough questions like, am I living in alignment with my values, or am I chasing someone else's version of success? It means acknowledging when you stray from your path and having the humility to course correct. Ultimately, authenticity is a journey, not a destination. It's not about getting it right all the time or being perfect at it. It's about consistently choosing to show up, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. It's about giving yourself grace when you fall short and trusting that the more you lean into who you truly are, the stronger and more resilient you'll become. Failure is a word that many of us fear, avoid, and sometimes even despise. It's tied to shame, embarrassment, and the feeling of not being enough. For years, I saw failure as a sign that I wasn't cut out for certain things, that I didn't measure up. It felt final, like a door slamming shut, a loud proclamation that I had reached the limit of my abilities. But over time, through countless stumbles, missteps, and outright disasters, I began to see failure not as an endpoint, but as a teacher, a sometimes harsh and unyielding one, but a teacher nonetheless. The thing about failure is that it's universal. Every single one of us will fail at something, and not just once. We'll fail repeatedly, often in ways we didn't anticipate. Yet, instead of embracing this inevitability, we spend so much energy trying to outrun it. We plan meticulously, we second guess ourselves, and we shy away from risks, all in the hope that we can somehow avoid failing. But here's the truth: avoiding failure isn't the same as succeeding. In fact, avoiding failure often keeps us stuck, afraid to try and unable to grow. One of the biggest lessons failure teaches is humility. There's nothing quite like falling flat on your face to remind you that you're human. It strips away pretense and forces you to confront your limitations. But within that humility lies an opportunity to learn, to reassess, and to grow. Failure has a way of shining a spotlight on the areas where we need to improve. It's like a mirror that reflects not just where we went wrong, but also where we have the potential to do better. Failure also teaches resilience. When you fail, you're faced with the choice: stay down or get back up. And every time you choose to rise again, you build a little more strength, a little more strength, a little more grit. Over time, you realize that failure isn't as devastating as it feels in the moment. Yes, it's uncomfortable, and yes, it can hurt, but it doesn't define you. What defines you is how you respond to it. Another profound lesson failure offers is perspective. When you're in the midst of failing, it can feel all-encompassing, as if the world is closing in. But as time passes, you begin to see it differently. You realize that the failure that felt so monumental was actually just one chapter in a much larger story. And often it's the failures that set the stage for your biggest breakthroughs. They force you to pivot, to rethink your approach, and sometimes to discover a path you never would have considered otherwise. Failure also has a way of fostering empathy. When you've struggled, when you've felt the sting of defeat, it becomes much easier to connect with others who are going through their own challenges. It softens you, makes you more understanding, and reminds you that everyone is fighting their own battles. In this way, failure doesn't just teach you about yourself, it teaches you about humanity. And perhaps one of the hardest but most rewarding lessons failure teaches is the importance of detaching your worth from your achievements. When you fail, it can feel personal, like a direct reflection of your value as a person. But failure isn't who you are, it's something that happens to you. Learning to separate the two is incredibly freeing. It allows you to take risks, to experiment, and to chase after big, audacious goals without being paralyzed by the fear of what it might say about you if things don't work out. Failure also forces you to get clear on what truly matters. Sometimes failing at one thing reveals that it wasn't what you wanted or needed in the first place. It pushes you to ask hard questions. Why am I pursuing this? Is it for me, or is it because I think it's what I'm supposed to do? Failure can be a powerful clarifier, cutting through the noise and helping you realign with your values and priorities. Of course, this doesn't mean failure is easy or pleasant. In the moment, it can feel overwhelming, even crushing. But with time and reflection, it often becomes one of the most valuable experiences you can have. It's through failure that you learn about your strengths, your weaknesses, and your capacity to grow. It's through failure that you discover what you're truly made of. It's through failure that you become not just stronger, but also wiser, more compassionate, and more willing to take the risks that lead to a life of purpose and meaning. Living with intention is about more than just setting goals or making plans. It's about aligning your life with your values, your passions, and the things that matter most to you. It's a practice of mindfulness and choice, a commitment to being fully present and deliberate in how you show up in the world. But in a culture that often celebrates busyness, productivity, and constant striving, living with intention can feel like swimming against the tide. It requires slowing down, reflecting, and making decisions that aren't always convenient or popular. To live with intention means taking ownership of your life. It's easy to fall into autopilot, letting the days blend into weeks and the weeks into years, all while following a script that was handed to you rather than one you wrote yourself. Maybe it's a career path you felt obligated to pursue, the relationships you stayed in out of habit, or the routines you follow because that's just how it's done. Without intention, life can feel like a series of obligations, a list of check boxes that never really lead to fulfillment. But living with intention asks us to pause and ask the deeper questions. What do I want my life to stand for? How do I want to spend my time, my energy, my resources? Am I living in a way that aligns with who I truly am and what I truly believe? These questions aren't always easy to answer, and sometimes they require us to confront uncomfortable truths about the choices we've been making. But they're essential because they help us move from a reactive existence to a proactive one. When you live with intention, every choice becomes an opportunity to affirm your values. It doesn't mean you'll never make mistakes or face challenges, but it does mean that even in the midst of uncertainty, you're guided by a sense of purpose. For instance, instead of saying yes to every opportunity or request, you start to evaluate, does this align with my priorities? Does this bring me closer to the life I want to create? Living with intention often means saying no more often than yes, not out of selfishness, but out of a commitment to living authentically. Living with intention also requires presence. It's not just about the big sweeping decisions, it's about how you show up in the small everyday moments. It's about choosing to be fully engaged in a conversation instead of distracted by your phone. It's about savoring a meal instead of rushing through it. It's about creating space for gratitude, for reflection, and for connection. These seemingly small acts, when done with intention, have the power to transform your life from something you endure into something you cherish. Another key aspect of living with intention is aligning your actions with your values. It's easy to talk about what we care about, but living with intention challenges us to act on those beliefs, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. If you value health, living with intention might mean prioritizing exercise and nourishing your body, even on the days when it's the last thing you feel like doing. If you value relationships, it might mean carving out time for the people who matter most, even when your schedule is packed. Living with intention also involves being mindful of your energy. It's about recognizing that your time and attention are finite resources and choosing to invest them wisely. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle, saying yes to everything and spreading yourself too thin. But living with intention asks you to focus on what truly matters, to prioritize quality over quantity, and to let go of the things that don't serve you. It's not about doing more, it's about doing what matters most. Intentional living often requires a willingness to slow down. In a fast-paced world, this can feel counterintuitive, even indulgent. But slowing down allows you to tune into your inner voice, to reconnect with what's meaningful, and to ensure that the life you're building is one that aligns with your deepest desires. It's not about being perfect or having it all figured out. It's about making conscious choices that reflect who you are and what you stand for. Living with intention also means being adaptable. Life is unpredictable and circumstances change, but living with intention gives you a framework to navigate those changes. It's not about rigidly clinging to a plan, but about staying true to your values even as the path shifts. It's about being clear on your why so that no matter what challenges arise, you can respond with clarity and purpose. At its core, living with intention is about creating a life that feels meaningful, fulfilling, and aligned with your true self. It's not about chasing perfection or meeting external expectations. It's about embracing the journey and making choices that reflect what you hold most dear. Human connection is one of the most profound and essential aspects of our lives. It's the invisible thread that binds us to one another, creating a sense of belonging, understanding, and shared humanity. At its core, connection is what gives life meaning. It's not the achievements, the accolades, or the material possessions that define a fulfilling life. It's the relationships we cultivate, the moments of shared laughter, the comfort of being truly seen and understood by another person. But in a world that often emphasizes independence, productivity, and individual success, the importance of connection can sometimes feel overshadowed. We're told to prioritize self-reliance, to keep our emotions in check, and to focus on climbing the ladder, whatever ladder that may be. In the pursuit of these goals, it's easy to lose sight of what truly sustains us, the people we love and the bonds we share. Human connection isn't a distraction or a luxury, it's a fundamental need, as essential to our well-being as food and water. When we talk about connection, it's easy to think of it in terms of surface-level interactions, a quick text, a polite greeting, or a like on social media. But true connection goes deeper than that. It's about being fully present with another person, offering your time, attention, and empathy without distraction or judgment. It's about creating a space where both people feel safe to be themselves, to share openly, and to be met with compassion rather than criticism. Human connection is built on vulnerability. It's not enough to simply be in the same room with someone or to exchange pleasantries. To truly connect, we must be willing to show up as we are, imperfections and all. That means sharing our joys and our struggles, admitting when we're scared or uncertain, and allowing others to see us in our most unguarded moments. It's a risk because connection requires us to let down our defenses, to trust that the other person will hold our truths with care. But it's also the foundation of intimacy and trust, the building blocks of every meaningful relationship. Connection is also about reciprocity. It's not just about what we receive, but also about what we give. It's listening when someone needs to talk, offering support without expecting anything in return, and being fully present even when it's inconvenient. It's about recognizing that relationships are a two-way street requiring effort, attention, and care from both sides. True connection is never one-sided. It's a mutual exchange that leaves both people feeling valued and supported. One of the most beautiful aspects of human connection is its ability to transcend differences. In a world that often feels divided by politics, culture, or beliefs, connection reminds us of our shared humanity. It's in the moments of eye contact with a stranger, the shared laughter over a universal truth, or the quiet understanding that passes between two people in a difficult time. These moments remind us that beneath our labels and identities, we are all more alike than we are different. Connection is also deeply healing. When we're struggling, it's easy to feel isolated, as though we're the only ones going through a particular challenge. But when someone reaches out, when they listen, understand, or simply sit with us in our pain, it can make all the difference. Connection doesn't necessarily solve our problems, but it reminds us that we don't have to face them alone. It's in these moments of shared vulnerability that we find strength, resilience, and hope. In today's fast-paced digital world, fostering connection can feel more challenging than ever. Technology has given us incredible tools to communicate, but it can also create a false sense of closeness. Like a comment or a message might feel like connection, but it often lacks the depth and authenticity of a face-to-face conversation or a heartfelt phone call. True connection requires more than just convenience. It requires effort, presence, and intentionality. Human connection isn't just about the big moments, the weddings, reunions, or milestones. It's also found in the small, everyday interactions that often go unnoticed. It's the barista who remembers your name in your coffee order, the neighbor who smiles and waves, the friend who checks in just because. These seemingly insignificant moments of connection remind us that we are part of something larger than ourselves, that we are seen, and that we matter. Connection also challenges us to grow. It's in our relationships with others that we learn patience, empathy, and the ability to navigate conflict. It's where we practice forgiveness, both for ourselves and for others. Human connection isn't always easy. It can be messy, frustrating, and imperfect. But it's also one of the most rewarding aspects of being alive. Through our relationships, we learn not only about others, but also about ourselves, our strengths, our limitations, and our capacity to love. At its heart, Human connection is about being fully present for one another. It's about creating moments where we put aside our distractions, our judgments, and our agendas and simply be with another person. Whether it's a conversation, a shared experience, or a simple moment of silence, these connections remind us of what truly matters. They ground us, inspire us, and give our lives a sense of purpose and meaning.